you're here. Yeah, we're so glad you're here. Oh, we're so glad to be together in unity. We're so glad. Hold the Christ in you. We appreciate you. And we bless your teachers too. And your parents as well. Of course. Thanks, guys. Good job. Let's give the band a hand. All right.
So we've been doing this summer series on unity through the decades, and we began with the 50s when people were looking for safety, uniformity, and just some calm after the storms. And then in the 60s, it was all about, well, how do we change that up? How do we change the world? How do we step out of the boundaries that have been made for us? And so things went a little wild and things got a little chaotic. The 60s were really a transformational period, but also filled with a lot of chaos. Then we come to the 70s. And the 70s were a decade of that word that was mentioned in the Daily Word when I turned around to James, integration. Because now we begin to ask not only how can we change the world, but more importantly, how do we change ourselves? The collective consciousness began turning from outer revolution to more inner transformation. So that's what we'll be talking about this morning.
And from a unity or metaphysical perspective, there were several spiritual themes that started to emerge in the 70s. Unity and other New Thought teachers led the way. Eric Butterworth, Ernest Holmes, Catherine Ponder, and many others. Mm-hmm. And began to teach a more spiritual message, more integrating it into everyday life. You know, sometimes people, like in the 60s, it was all exotic. You know, it was all different. It was from the East, all this stuff. And then, but in the 70s, people said, hey, let's get a little bit more practical about some things.
Yeah, well, let's be practical for a moment. And before we get started into the real meat of the message, let's talk about some of our experiences from what the 70s were like and what we remember. And some of you were there and you remember, and many of you were born after that and you don't. So one of the things is the average cost of a home in 1970. Do you have a guess? $23,000.
That's the average.
That was the average. And the interest rate was 7.3%. But in 79, the average home jumped to $69,000 and the interest rate jumped to 11.3. So that's what the home industry looked like in that 10-year
You could
period.
buy a car for $4,700. I remember my first car was $400.
But the first new car that we bought in 79 was a Chevy. I don't remember what it was, but it had nothing, no air.
They just made it for a few years and then they got rid of it.
And I think we paid about $4,800 for it. A gallon of gas at the time was 57 cents. Yeah.
Loaf of bread, 35 cents. Gallon of milk, $1.50. A dozen eggs for 75 cents. Butter was 80 cents a pound. A McDonald's cheeseburger was how much?
30 cents.
30 cents.
I think 25 for the hamburger, 30 cents for the cheeseburger. And
how much were the fries?
Oh, yeah. You got to have fries to go with it. 35 cents.
And a cup of coffee you could get for $0.25. You know, candy bar was 15 cents. I remember that I could walk to the store and a drugstore and get 2 comic books, a bag of M&Ms, and a Coke with $1, and then have change left over to go back and do it again in a few weeks. You know?
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? Soft drinks were like 15 to 25 cents. Movie tickets, a couple bucks.
$2.
How much was a stamp? 10
10
cents.
cents.
How much was a daily newspaper? This is average, you know.
Yeah.
You might have got it cheaper where you lived. I know we did. But bigger cities, you know, it costs more. A pair of Levi's were $12. Converse sneakers. Anybody wear Converse? Yeah. $12.
$12. Yeah.
And you remember the telephone? When you That's enough. I'm already tired just thinking about it. Well, push button phones started to were on the rise. And we had in our home, I don't know about you, but we had these really long cords.
Yeah, we had mobile phones. They were just attached to a really long cord.
And I know there were times, you know, where you'd have a conversation you didn't want your parents to hear. So, let me go in the other room. And you'd shut the door and have a conversation.
Yeah.
But we thought we were really doing something.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what it was, I don't know. And there was also party lines. Anybody remember party lines? It's where you shared your phone with other people. Isn't that weird? Isn't that wild? And so sometimes I remember picking up the phone and then you'd hear a click. And so you knew somebody was there. And then after a while, you'd hear them breathing. And then you would say something interesting and you go, "Oh, you're kidding." And that's when you caught them. You say, "Wilma, get off the phone," or whoever it was.
So 20% of the homes had the new luxury item called a dishwasher. And do you remember the popular colors of appliances in the 70s?
Avocado green. That's right.
Avocado green, burnt orange, harvest
Burnt
gold.
orange was an actual color.
Yeah.
Burnt orange.
Yeah. My mother loved her harvest gold.
Yes.
And of course, chocolate brown. Color television. By the end of the decade, color TVs dominated American living rooms. One TV, cable finally came out, went from rabbit ears and 3 or 4 channels to all of a sudden many channels, including watching movies at home through this new thing called HBO. Yeah.
I remember the preachers loved preaching about hell's box office. I remember that as a kid. So.
And the 1970s really was the last era where we recall children really having free reign of their subdivisions and their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
In 1980, things would turn to stranger danger and satanic panic and parent, and we'll talk about that next week. But parents got a little more, no, you need to stay in the yard or you need to stay at the neighbor's yard. Things became much more closed in. But in the 70s, my gosh, I told James, I remember on Saturdays, in the summertime especially, of course, we would get up at the crack of dawn, go out the door, hit our bikes with the little banana seats, and Mom and Dad would not see me again until sundown. I would come home and chase fireflies in the yard and that sort of thing.
That explains a lot.
They didn't have a clue where I was at. I was out riding with my gang of friends, and we would ride down by the school and pick milkweed pods, and then we'd go to somebody's house and hang out for a while, and go to somebody else's house for lunch, and then over here to this part. I mean, this was the last era of that happening. Children can barely get out of their own yards now. They can't even hardly, go across the street to the park. It's almost unheard of. So, that's kind of the 70s.
In a nutshell.
A picture of it in a nutshell. So let's turn to the spiritual side of things. You want to start?
The journey started to go within more and more. People began to, after the protest march and the social upheaval and the idealism of the 60s, many people realized that changing governments and institutions wasn't enough. That lasting change required the transformation of consciousness. How many know that's still the answer today? Right? And this led to an explosion of interest in meditation, yoga, Eastern spirituality, personal growth, holistic healing, and conscious relationships. So my question is, does that mean that all relationships before that were unconscious? Maybe. Something to think about, right? But the collective message was that the peace you seek in the world begins within you. Isn't that great? People begin to see that thought and belief and choice was a self-empowerment. And they begin to latch on to that more and more. Now, there were a lot of folks that all of this just kind of went right by them, but it was happening all around. The seeds were being planted. And so Unity had been teaching this for decades. And suddenly, much of the culture began exploring these ideas. Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. You know that Gandhi was heavily influenced by New Thought. He studied Emerson, and he read, all the books, and studied those things, which was very interesting. And did you know that Dr. Martin Luther King did not believe in original sin? He also didn't believe that there was a hellfire in the afterlife. So there were a lot of people who were seeing things differently. They were saying that, hey, God is bigger than any one religion. How many know that whatever box that you try to put God in, after a while, that box is going to have to enlarge itself, right? Because you can't really put God in a box. The second thing
was beginning to discover the authentic self. The authentic self. So the question shifted from what should I become to who am I really? Who am I really? So books, workshops, retreats, therapy, all became encouraged to people to participate in. I remember when the books and the therapy for healing your childhood wounds came out. That was a big one. But the Sanfords, I think, wrote a book on that. And that became a thing for people to begin to explore how their childhood wounds were affecting their life.
Well, forgive me for interrupting,
No, that's
but
fine.
Jimmy Carter's sister actually wrote a book about inner child healing.
That's right.
And so, being that he was a presidential figure, her books were, read by a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it was all starting to come out. We began to understand some of these deeper things. Yeah. Go ahead.
Therapy was beginning to encourage people to express their emotions, to discover purpose, and to build, as we were talking about, authentic, more conscious relationships. So metaphysically, the soul was beginning to awaken from that past collective conditioning. We came out of that period of war, out of the chaos of the 60s, and now we're settling into, everything maybe stems from the inside. Maybe I need to look at the interior world. And I don't know, maybe you have recalled, we've talked before about, Carolyn Mace has said that no time in history had there been the opportunity for people to begin to focus on their interior world than after post-World War II, because all of a sudden they had more free time on their hands. They had the time that they could sit down with a book or they could go to a therapist, where before that, a lot of time was spent just surviving, just getting the day-to-day things done. And now all of a sudden we have this time we can use to explore health and spirit and body ideas. So people began doing that more, having more time for that.
Do you remember this song? I cry to no one there, and no one saw me, not even the chair. Remember that? Who sang that? Neil Diamond. And people were becoming more aware of themselves. They were becoming more aware of their own energies, their own expression, right? How many know that you've got to get in touch with yourself before you touch anybody else, right? Before you can connect with other people. You have to be aware of your own energy, because when you get around people, you won't know how to be, right? You won't understand connection. You don't, and that's why a lot of relationships didn't last, was because it was all about what do you expect from me? Well, what do you want from me? And then you think, well, I can't do that. And they're saying, well, I can't do that either, right? And so until you become aware of your own energy, your own qualities, your own boundaries, when you're aware of those things, then you can present yourself in the world and be more in touch with people and have better connections with people, right? So that was beginning to be understood. Yeah. They began to see.
So another thing that began to happen was the rise of holistic living. People began reconnecting with the body as a sacred partner or the temple, rather than merely as a machine. All those granola eating hippies from the 60s, that carried over. All of a sudden, organic foods were being made available, and people were being more thoughtful and conscious about that
like
sort of thing.
Like Kraft macaroni and cheese.
And interest grew in natural foods, not Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Oh, okay.
Natural foods and herbal medicines and organic farming, alternative healing, mind-body medicine, mind-body connections. And this really reflected the deeper realization that the mind, body, and spirit are all interconnected. So we begin to see this getting played out in the 70s. Now, Unity had long affirmed that healing through prayer was honoring the body's wisdom. And now these ideas were making their way into the general population and was resonating with a lot of seekers.
Because your body is the temple. Your body is holy and sacred. And we need to listen to it. Yeah. You need to listen to your body. When you eat something and you have indigestion, what does that mean? It's time to take an antacid. No. It says, this isn't what you needed. In the Bible, there's a scripture that says that when you eat your food with gratitude. Now, why should we do that? Well, on a scientific level, we understand that it's important that when you eat, that you are in the right frame of mind. Does it make sense? That you are feeling good. Because when you eat and you're not feeling good, what happens? If you eat when you feel insecure or worry, you get indigestion. Plus, you eat more. And you know what I mean? More than what your body needs. So it's important to pay attention. Listen to what your body is telling you, because we need to be conscious of our bodies. For years, I was totally unconscious. I just looked at it as a thing. The body's just a thing. And the body is a part of your expression because your spiritual essence is manifesting through the body, right? Through the body.
So not only was the body beginning to be seen as sacred, but the earth was being seen as sacred. So remember last week when we talked about the 60s, Rachel Carson wrote her book, Silent Spring, and the ideas from that book began to work their way into 70s culture. And the environmental movement became a spiritual awakening for people. We had in 1970, we had the very first Earth Day. Did you know that? And there was growing concern about...
It was April 22nd.
April 22nd.
And you know why I know that,
Yeah,
right?
I do know why you know that.
It's my birthday.
And there was growing concern about pollution. How many of you remember the commercial of the Native Americans standing in front of all the pollution with the teardrop? Mm-hmm. So we begin to see some of those messages, societal messages about pollution and protecting wildlife. And
Well, you know, pollution, let's talk about that for a second because in some of the bigger cities, I mean, it's like a cloud.
mm-hmm.
It was really, really bad. I mean, it was awful. The pollution, it was just out of control. And because of her writing this book, that's why they outlawed DDT.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know what DDT does for you?
Nothing good.
Nothing good. And so, you know, there were a lot of things that we were doing to the earth that we didn't know that we were connected to the earth. Right? The earth is an extension of us. If we're not treating the earth well, then what's going to happen? Because the earth is what feeds us. It's what clothes us. It's what gives us oxygen so we can breathe. We are earthlings. Tell the person next to you, say, welcome to earth. Right? We are, and earth is a whole system. It's a living system. And so we need to feed into it positive energy and appreciate it. Do you know the trees and the winds talk? The Native Americans, they knew this. They didn't own anything. They realized that you can't take it with you. And then when you got here, it was a gift anyway,
Mm-hmm.
right? How many know you really don't own anything just because you have a little piece of paper that says, James King, the owner of this car, or whatever. Well, you know what? When I'm gone, it's not going to be my guitar anymore. It's going to go to one of my sons, right? So you don't really own anything. How many know that's just a game we play with ourselves? We just use what we have while we're here. And wouldn't it be great if we use things in a positive way? That when you're done with something, just put it out there in circulation, let it go to somebody else. Yeah. Instead of putting it into your garage and then stored it in your basement and then buying these places where you have to store it, just get rid of it. You can't take it with you. Bring it. That's right. This is an advertisement for our next yard sale. No. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just learn to walk it lightly through the world.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? To move lightly through the world. Don't carry so much baggage with you. Now, it's great to have a beautiful home and a car and all of that. It's great, right? But don't let it possess you.
Yeah.
You need to possess your possessions. Make sense?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we're part of the earth school, aren't we? We're here on earth, but we're only here for a while. Most of us. Some of us will be around a lot longer.
I guess. I don't know. So in the late 60s, people began, the hippie community began hanging out in clusters of what would become sort of communes. They would do communal living. But what they discovered by the time the 70s rolled around was that this communal living was really unhealthy. There was a lot of prolonged drug usage. They didn't have jobs many times. And it just was not what they thought they were going to be creating. They didn't become a lasting solution that they had been imagining. The thought was they would come together in love and peace, and if they, shared and all of this, that, it would be like paradise on earth, and that's just not the way it came together. So instead, when they realized that wasn't the way to go, the deeper lesson became understanding that a healthy community, a healthy commune at that time, required healthy individuals. And that having the desire for love and peace alone wasn't really enough. A community requires responsibility. What happens if nobody takes responsibility for picking the vegetables? Nobody eats, right? What happens when there's no forgiveness in a community? It eventually will fall apart. It will implode because of all of the hateful feelings towards one another. Communication. Community requires communication. Boundaries. Boundaries are good. We even have boundaries here in this community. Boundaries set in place to protect everyone for the highest and best of everyone involved. And community also required shared purpose. And just getting together for the thrill of doing drugs is not really a shared purpose. So these communes of the 60s really began to kind of dissolve, and they started looking for ways to make them more spiritually transformative, to bring the spiritual lessons that they were getting into them, because they understood that where they had been really unhealthy, they needed to bring some health and responsibility and all those other wonderful things to it.
We were living in Asheville, North Carolina, back in the late 90s. And I got a phone call from a friend. He said, "Hey," he said, we want to put together an intentional community. And he said, "Would you like to be a part of it?" I said, "Well, I'd love to hear about it." So we all got together, all these folks, and we were talking about it. And they were saying, "Oh, all love, and we just take care of each other." Oh yeah. And then somebody said, "Well, let's talk about what it would look like." And so they started talking about it, and that's where people started having opinions. Before it was all love and light, and now all of a sudden, no, we can't do that. That's not going to work. And they say, "Yeah, but we got to do this because that's no." And then, it didn't take very long before the intentional community was a no-go. You know what I mean? Because people were not spiritually, emotionally mature enough on the inside to live in harmony with each other. And how many understand that we live on an earth that is one community and we're all part of it? And did you know, I don't know if you ever looked at it this way, but you are married to every other human being on this planet. And by married, I mean you are joined to them. You're connected to them by the one Spirit, the one power, the one presence. Everybody is your brother. That's what Jesus taught. Everybody's your sister. Can I get an amen from somebody? All right? Because really, we are all one. That was the revelation that people begin to have. But see, a lot of times we talk about oneness, and it gets into a mess. Instead of just understanding that, hey, we all have a right to our own beliefs, our own ideas, our own thoughts, our own feelings, and our own opinions. And we must do what? Respect those thoughts and opinions of other people, right? You have a right to be who you are, to think like you think, because you are an original. You're a masterpiece. right? Will you change? Hopefully, right? If you're open to it, we can all change and grow, but we need to learn how to respect each other and realize that this relationship that we have on this planet is a holy and sacred relationship. We're all one people. And once we figure that out, then heaven on earth is a real possibility. It really is. But we still got some work to do on the inside. Isn't that true?
So by the middle and late 1970s, the most incredible thing that's ever happened on this planet began to emerge.
Ah, yes, yes.
It was wonderful. It was spectacular. And it birthed things, people, groups like
Staying alive.
Casey and the Sunshine
alive.
Band.
Huh? Oh.
And the Bee Gees. And I know that it's very divisive because many people go, it wasn't music and it was the worst thing that ever happened. But I am here to tell you, to send a message.
We all have our opinions, don't we?
Disco and dance culture emerged. How many remember Olivia Newton-John in the movie Xanadu? Skating around with the muses. She was a muse. Anyway. It was often dismissed as entertainment. But spiritually, it reflected something deeper. People needed some joy.
Yeah.
After all the tumultuous years, the pain, the death of political leaders that had been televised, that they had seen, the war, all of this stuff, they needed some joy. And dance became a celebration. It became freedom. And it also became unity when everyone was doing the same moves, And it embodied expression.
I could picture a disco ball right in the middle of this
yeah.
room. Wouldn't that be something? Just
throwing twinkle lights all
everywhere.
over the place. But
James, the board would like to talk to you.
But joy became medicine that they needed. It really was a joyful movement, an opportunity for people to move their bodies and to just celebrate and express joy.
Yeah.
And it really supports the unity teaching that joy is the frequency of the divine. And with that in mind, that means that disco is a divine frequency.
Okay.
I said it.
Yes, you did. But they started waking up to their own bodies, and learning to get comfortable inside your own body. A lot of people are not comfortable in their bodies. When you look in the mirror in the morning, you say, hello.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. And learn to appreciate this body. Learn to appreciate the movement, right? With arms, what can I do with arms? What can I do with lips? You know what I mean? What can I do with my nose? Smell the good food that Leah's cooking. All right?
Okay.
You're a good cook. So people were starting to feel a little more at home, but a lot of people still don't feel that way, right? But what we want to do is integrate what was the message that the divine, that the universal spirit was trying to get through to the people at the time. Actually, it's the same message that spirit is still trying to get to us right now. Are you seeing that? It's really the same messages.
So another thing that began to happen was more global travel, more international media, and greater cultural exchange. So the West was beginning to meet the East in spiritual traditions, and it was happening in mainstream culture. You may recall about this time, Hollywood began putting out the karate movies by Bruce Lee. All of a sudden, the interest in martial arts and Asian culture began to increase. So the collective message kind of became one of truth is bigger than any religion. Oh, truth can be found here and truth can be found here. It's bigger than any religion. And this, of course, aligns closely with Unity's teachings that truth can be found in many spiritual paths. And interest grew in understanding the scripture more metaphysically and more allegorically and symbolically rather than being so literal with it. Teachers began to explore in Unity things like the 12 powers, the metaphysical meaning of Bible stories. We had Ed Rabel and Eric Butterworth, who both were doing tremendous work in that area. The inner journey was seen as being represented by biblical characters. And there was also a lot of focus on the one power and the one presence. And people were increasingly beginning to ask, what does this story mean in my own consciousness? Which is the same thing we ask today. Yes? Yeah. Rather than, did this literally happen? Now, of course, that was still in the fundamentalist circles, but it was people were beginning to open up to it a little bit. There was beginning to be a crack in that. And that kind of became the hallmark of Unity education, right?
Yeah.
Asking those questions of, what does this mean in my consciousness? That's exactly where Unity had been in their ideology, if you want to call it that, their belief structure, their teachings.
I
all that
remember
time.
sitting in a bookstore one time. We were at a bookstore, and I was just kind of looking through a magazine and drinking a cup of coffee, or whatever it was. And anyway, I overheard two ladies behind me just talking, and their conversation got louder and louder. And the one lady was saying that the Jonah in the whale, it wasn't a real whale. And the other gal says, no, you're wrong. It was a real whale, and because that's what God said, and that's just the way it is. And they were having this conversation, and I thought, this is interesting. Because how many understand? We don't know what happened with a lot of these stories. I mean, I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast last Tuesday. You know what I mean? Well, I do because I kind of eat the same thing. But if I forgot that, I'd be in really bad shape. But, I got to thinking, I said, it doesn't matter if the story was literal or not. What is the truth of the story? What is it pointing to? What is it trying to tell us? Yeah. That's what stories are really about. That's what the parables were about. Jesus was pointing to something, and he said, you will know the truth, and what? The truth will make you free. But first, it might mess you up.
You off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we were learning in the 70s, and we're still learning today.
We are.
Right?
So one of the things that we've concluded with each week, this third week now, is that there is a shadow that exists with each of these eras. Every decade has its shadow. And in the 70s, as the search for freedom expanded, so did escapism. There was more of a tendency to want to escape into addiction. There were new drugs that were arriving on the scene. being manufactured. Materialism came really to kind of rear its head in the 70s more so than it had. In the 60s, a lot of people were giving their stuff away and doing the communal living. In the 70s, it really became really focused on materialism and cynicism. After the war in Vietnam, after the political scandals, people became very cynical. And some people will say that the 70s were kind of the beginning of the me first, individualistic mindset. Maybe it was the beginning, but it certainly continues to this day, many being focused more on self, me, as opposed to community, family, my neighbor, and others.
Well, I worship the Trinity of me, myself, and I.
Yeah. But spiritually, these reflected the challenge of seeking fulfillment out there.
Yeah.
When we were being presented with the deeper invitation to awaken within here.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about the balance. Yes, you want to be aware of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You want to love yourself. How many here love yourself? Say it with me. I love myself. That's a good thing. But what was happening is that people were using outside things to try to make them look better, right? But there was no work being done on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole key. So people were competing against each other. And you remember being in gym class and everybody's picking sides, and there's always 2 or 3 people that are just kind of, no, I don't want them. I don't want them on my team.
That was me. I was one of those.
Were you one of those?
I wasn't very athletic. People didn't want me on their team.
Oh, thank you.
So, but all of us, we had, a lot of anger because our needs weren't being met. Mm-hmm. Has anybody here found somebody who loves you perfectly and takes care of every single need that you have? Who is that? Oh, okay. Right answer.
I was going to say
good.
My cat, but that's a better answer. So to conclude,
let's wrap it up.
The 1970s really taught us that the greatest revolution was not fought in the streets, but it's awakened in the heart, because we discovered that the peace wasn't something that the government was going to create. We looked at, and we should have learned that back at Jesus's time, because it didn't create it then either, and there were all of these followers waiting for that to happen. It's something that we have to cultivate within ourselves, right? Every meditation, every act of forgiveness, every step we make toward healing, every moment of disco joy becomes part of humanity's collective evolution. And as our consciousness changes, and this is what we're talking about pretty much every Sunday, as our consciousness changes, it changes the world. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes. So the 70s reminded humanity that the outer world changes only as quickly as the inner world awakens.
Yeah.
Fascinating decade.
Yeah.
You could really talk.
I kind of still live there
I know.
sometimes.
Yeah. Don't forget your handouts on the front table if you want one. Hope you enjoyed that this morning.
Yeah. See, if you wait long enough, they'll clap. All right, let's take a breath together and just breathe for a moment. I'm going to turn down the lights. So how are you feeling right now on the inside? Because God is an inside job. Maybe we've stirred a few memories today. Maybe some of you had never heard of those things before. But don't miss what God is trying to tell us. All of life is just God trying to get your attention. That's what it is. Everything. Become aware of the beautiful one power, one presence, one life. There is no spot where God is not. And sometimes we get tired. Sometimes we get exhausted. Sometimes we're pushing just too hard. We're trying to make something happen. The best thing to do is just make peace with where you're at right now. Who are you now? Who am I now? What's my purpose today? And if I just follow that and go with that, it'll create a powerful and wonderful life, beautiful life, a journey that is enjoyable, is peaceful. Does that speak to you this morning? I remember a song from the 70s that said, "Keep on trucking." While you're alive, you're going to keep moving. Where's the river going to take you? Where's the flow going today? Where am I right now? Who am I? What qualities want to emerge in my life today? So I make peace with the past. I make peace with the present, with anything that looks like it's not where I want it to be. I'm just going to be at peace with it. And sometimes what happens is when you are able to let go and release something and be at peace with it, you give it permission to change, to transform, to reshape itself into something that is healthy, is good, it's alive. So yes, we are grateful today for all of it, every bit of it, even the hard stuff, even the arguments, the disagreements, the wounds, the pain, because all of those things are teachers, if we'll allow them to be that. They're teachers of wisdom. What have I learned through my challenges, through those hard times? What have I learned? And that is the gold. That's the treasure. So breathe deeply now. Forgive yourself. And while you're at it, just go ahead and forgive everybody else. Especially those that come to your mind. There's always a reason that they do. If you know of someone this morning that you'd like to hold space for and pray for, I invite you to whisper their name aloud at this time. and whoever they are. Wish them well. Say a prayer for them now. Surround them with your good thoughts, praying for their highest and their best, affirming peace and prosperity and joy. All the good stuff. I see you having all that you need in your life, my friend. Complete, whole, and well. I'll hold that space for you. I'll hold that vision for you in this moment. So we pray now for our community. Let us affirm the divine blessing for each and every one in this room right here, right now. For those watching online, let us hold all of us together in a spirit of health and wholeness and well-being, prosperity and joy. And while we're at it, we just reach our arms around the whole planet, loving all, forgiving all. Recognize the sacredness of all life and the appreciation and the gratitude. So I'll leave you now in the silence for just a moment. And so our natural response is just say, thank you. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. I invite you to come back into the room. Take a moment to just move, slowly move your body, stretching a little bit, feeling alert and awake. And good.